And we're live! Woohoo! So, the more observant of you will notice it's only me this week. Christelle is off with her fiance in San Diego doing stuff. So, it's given me the opportunity to get somebody who gets up a bit later, at a later time in the day. So, today's guest is the amazing pop star and agency owner and social media guru, Brianna Shelko. So, for anybody who has not heard of you yet, maybe you could start off by describing who is Brianna Shelko and how did you get into music?
That's a great question. Well, Brianna Shelko is a 28-year-old singer-songwriter and agency owner, social media agency owner. I got started in music when I was 7. I wrote my first song, and it was on this tiny little chintzy, piano, the ding, 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 type little toy pianos. And I finally learned heart and soul. So I started playing it, and then I was like, well, if I can play this, then I can play other things. And then I started putting my own words on top of it, and then that just snowballed into who I am today as a songwriter. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay, so is that Heart and Soul? There's probably hundreds of songs called Heart and Soul. So that's a Power song, was it a different one?
It's the heart and soul. I fell in love with you and lost control.
It's not the one I was thinking of. I was thinking of this one by Tapao. I'm picking up. Okay, before YouTube takes us off for copyright violation. So you obviously you were on the main stage at Social Media Marketing World singing, but you also have a social media side. So how, presumably, I think this is true for most musicians, you'd like to be just on the main stage. Well, maybe you wouldn't. I mean, I'm assuming here you'd like to be on the main stage doing gigs in front of 50,000 people at stadiums all the time. But how did you get into social media, and how does that dovetail with your music work?
That's a really good question. Honestly, it didn't dovetail at all until 2018, I believe, was the first time I performed at Social Media Marketing World. And it happened because I reached out to Phil Mershon, the director of events, out on Twitter, and I said, hey, I really I'm in social media. At the time, I was a social media owner as well.
Yeah.
And I said, I would really like to write the theme song for your event, and I could write it in 10 minutes or less, or 7 minutes or less. And he was like, yeah, right. And so that's how it dovetailed. We ended up, wrote the song, passed it to him. He loved it. And then so on and so forth. But was the question how I got started in social media, or how?
I think you answered the question, really.
Okay, I was I just want to make sure I answer your question directly. But that is that's how the two worlds initially met, but I was already a social media agency owner.
Okay. So let's wind back then beyond the mixing of music and social media. How did you end? What was your, well, I'll ask I don't know why, this is a social media loving question really, but what was the first network you started on? And when did you realize that social media was something that you were interested in?
Oh, well, the first one was it was MySpace. It was MySpace. Yeah. And I fell in love with it because I just thought it was so cool. I was a little shy when I was younger. And so I didn't have this plethora of friends. So I just thought it was the most wild experience that I could go on this website, and if the boy I had a crush on was on there and he posted a picture, I didn't have to see him in person and then blush and, all that good stuff. It was cool to feel connected without being connected. So that was the first platform. And then it kind of snowballed into Facebook, kind of took over the world, and that's my favorite platform still. Well, now Instagram, but for a long time it was Facebook.
Okay. No, just to be totally inconsistent, I'm going to switch back to music now. If we keep the listeners confused, then they might subscribe more. But what was I going to say? Yeah, you're on Spotify. You're not on Amazon. I was going to listen on it. I'm mostly on Amazon Music's what I listen to, but you're on Spotify, and I think you've had a few hits, songs with lots of downloads. So let's talk about when was the first time you had a song that was kind of a hit, a success on Spotify, and how that felt for you?
I'm trying to go back to the first song that really, it didn't take off on Spotify. It is on Spotify, but it did take off on radio, and that was
Okay.
I was 17, and it was my song Replay.
Yeah.
And it actually got stolen by a famous DJ in China, and then I'm still very popular in China somehow. And I've never been to China, and I think that's the wildest thing. And so that was my first time, I'd say, going global, because it got picked up and taken everywhere. But on Spotify itself, was the first time was Survive in 2018. And so when I released Survive, it went gangbusters, and I wasn't really sure where the traffic was coming from at first. I was like, wow, what this, I'm used to around 50,000 to 100,000 streams on average, when I put something out. But like, this went over 600,000, 700,000, kept climbing. And I was like, oh, wow. So they really, but it was kind of relevant. I think at the time, everybody really just, well, it wasn't 2018, it was 2020 when I put out Survive. And it was just everybody just trying to survive, just trying to survive the pandemic, trying to survive the effects from the aftermath. It was catastrophic. So, that's where that song came from. And it resonated with a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, I come from the sort of, well, I come originally from an IT background, but recently, the last 10 years or so, I've been writing books and doing other things in the book world. And there's a lot of worry in the writing and author world about it going the same way as music royalties have. Because my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong here, that for each Spotify download, you get like not a lot. You don't get a lot of money from sales on Spotify.
Not even a penny. It's like 1% of a penny or some crap like that. It's terrible. It's terrible.
So for the 100,000 odd sales, you're not going to be getting $100,000.
No, most definitely not. Definitely not. So no, I didn't see a big paycheck. I don't even know what that paycheck was, but it was not whopping.
So, what is your advice because you're you're a relatively successful musician, really. It's just because of the low royalties, I guess you have to do, and you probably enjoy social media, I guess, as well. That's the thing. We can't all be doing stuff that's. So what would your advice be to anybody who is like a young musician coming through as to how, because obviously there will be some people who are still going to be massively successful and the rest of it, but there's probably a lot of people who have great music talent to show the world, but they might not be the next Killers or whoever the big band is now. Taylor Swift. Well, Taylor Swift. So what would your advice be?
My advice for them would be to utilize TikTok as much as humanly possible. Like back when I was, 10, 12, when I was putting out songs that were actual hits, they didn't get the attention they needed or, whatever, because we had Facebook. I think, let's see, 10 or 12 was at MySpace, or I think it had already went to Facebook. I don't remember, but there really wasn't like a massive platform for like just music. TikTok, you post one thing, it can blow up within 60 seconds, depending on how the algorithm feels that day. And if, your content resonates with all these people, but that would be my number one advice. My second piece of advice is learn about copywriting and learn about protecting your music at an early age. If you don't know, pay for at least an hour of an entertainment attorney's opinion. Like even if you work at Arby's and you're like, I can't afford an entertainment attorney, just like earn $250 or $300, enough to earn 1 hour of advice from an actual entertainment attorney, because it will change your life. I've learned some really hard lessons from not having an entertainment attorney's mindset. And my third piece of advice would be, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And that's like something my mom has always taught me from the music industry from a very young age, because everyone comes, oh, you're so talented and I can offer you this and this and this. And really they can't. They don't even know who they are. They're just hanging there, like they're on your coattails. And so that would be my three pieces of advice. Utilize social media and get popular there first, before you even think about working with a manager or anybody else.
Yeah. So I found a website on one of your social links. You seem to have different. You've got a podcast somewhere. You've got a.
Yeah.
I don't. I mean, my website's totally all over the place, so I can't. I'm not going to criticize anybody. But I think it's called like Leveling Up Productions or something along those lines.
Oh yeah.
And it talks about you write songs for people as a kind of a commercial service. So let's talk a bit about that. If somebody wanted to hire you or the people you work with to write a song for them, how much would that cost? And why? Like, I'm going to be devil's advocate here. Why not just get a free one off the internet somewhere? Why hire you to write a song for them?
Well, free is never actually free in music.
Yeah.
There's always some kind of ownership that comes with that free. So that would be the first thing. You might be able to lease. You'll never own the master. So my first thing is, why not have something more custom to your service, to you as a person, to your event, to whatever it happens to be. And I do write commercially, and I love writing commercially, like for social media marketing world. But where my passion lies is really writing for, let's say, Tim, if you were a pop artist and you wanted to sound like Dua Lipa, for you to hire me and bring me in the booth that day and like, let's knock it out. And then as far as price goes, it quite depends on the project. Sometimes if it's a single, it's a day rate. And so sometimes if it's an album, we take it off the back end instead because we know that it's being distributed on MTV and Disney and whatever it happens to be. So it really depends how it's arranged. But anyone can reach out to me at any time to get a quote. Yeah.
Nicely dodged there and answering the first question.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to answer that though, because I mean, well, I'll tell you, if I'm just writing it for a commercial event, it's $1,200 just to write it. But you want me to perform it and do other things, it goes up from there.
Yeah. So, like, where is the biggest place you performed? And would you want to be somebody who performed in massive stadiums and things, or are you somebody who prefers like smaller venues?
Oh no, no. Get me in front of 5 million people. Like I'm that person. No, I don't, because my music, I don't write just like la di da di da. So I write anthems. Like they are anthem songs. They are like the crowd could resonate and like sing it back as loud as possible. So no, I want to be on the biggest stage known to man. Like, but as far as my biggest performance yet, it depends. I mean, I would say probably some of my televised performances would be like I was on MTV and I played on MTV for an episode, and that was however many millions of people saw that. But on stage, I would say the first year social media marketing world was probably one of the largest crowds that I remember off the top of my head. So
that's about 400, 500. Well, I suppose it's right at the beginning. Yeah.
It was like there were 3,000 people there, like in 2018, I believe.
Yeah, pre-pandemic, I'm thinking.
Yeah, it was like 3 times as big as this past year. And it was very fun. Like they flew my dancers out. We put on quite a show. So it was fun. Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you a similar question. We've had people on about live streaming and being in video. Everybody, I think, has problems performing on stage or going on video or doing audio. Hopefully you're not the 1% of people who are just like, I'm fine, I was fine, just go straight out. How do you prepare yourself if you're going in front of a crowd of 3,000 people? Do you still get nervous and you just overcome it? Or have you just got so used to doing it that now you can just go, yeah, give me the mic, we'll go and we'll sing a song now?
So I'm a very big proponent of, fly the jet even without a pilot's license. To answer your question directly, I get extremely nervous before a performance. I mean, I can actually, it's gotten better with the years, but I have to literally compartmentalize my feelings up here. And then I have to hop out of my head and say, do you want that Grammy? Yeah. Do you want people to take you seriously? If you want this, you better get your butt out there and show everybody that you can actually do it, because that's what it takes. And then I have, those 2 voices in my head, but it's really compartmentalizing and I have to force myself to go do it. Yeah, it's hard. I'm an extrovert, but I'm naturally rather introverted. Like where I feel most comfortable is in a studio setting,
Yeah.
But once you're on stage, you love it. If there's 5,000 people singing your song in front of you, like there's no energy that can even explain how that feels. Like it compares to nothing. You would just have to do it to them. You would just have
Well,
to
if they're asking me to perform, it's like, oh yeah, we have Costco. I said I could. I'd do it for $1. Yeah, I outbid you.
got you $1. You got to be quicker than that.
Okay, so I feel like I'm asking the same question here again, but I'm going to ask it because I think there would be some people. I'm always doing that. If it was a young person, but let's say somebody is interested in music, but they're not necessarily somebody who's played piano or done music at school. They've not done the violin or anything. They're just somebody who likes music and they want to get into doing pop music or something. They like Taylor Swift, for example,
right?
But they haven't had any musical training. What kind of suggestions would you give them in terms of how they could get into? Let's say they're a teenager and they're not from necessarily. I'm not saying that somebody played with sticks or whatever, but they haven't got a lot of money to spend. How's a good way for them to get started in music and to actually maybe like start to earn a small amount of money to pay for equipment and stuff? Or do they need to just save up and go to a studio somewhere? How would you suggest somebody gets into pop music?
Yeah, no, actually there's a lot of ways to answer that question. So from me, I did not grow up with money. Like we did not have it. There was no, hey, let's, my parents putting me in a studio because I can sing really well. We couldn't afford it. So from a young age, it was Brianna going out there and hustling and getting sponsorships. Like I literally would walk to the local, we're talking like little 13-year-old Brianna walking to the local restaurant and saying, hello, I can't offer you anything, but what I can offer you is a credit in my music video. Would you sponsor me? And I will put this on YouTube and you'll get some kind of, digital credit. And most of the time people have a heart for driven young ones who are really trying and they will contribute. And another resource would be like GoFundMe but I will say just a hint of advice for any young ones, like the GoFundMes don't always rub people the right way. So it almost appears better if you are out there hustling, knocking on doors and then let the people who support you start showing up with some dollars to help you get to where you want to be, but also be very targeted with what you want. So like my first keyboard was actually given to me by my mom. So I didn't have to earn my first keyboard, but I kept it for 15 years. And I just now got a new keyboard. So let me be very clear. Like you don't need this new extravagant grand keyboard sitting in your living room. Like you can utilize it until the wheels fall. Like literally it stopped working. Like the screen went out. It was like, help me. She's played me too much. Like this is, I'm ready to die now. And then I actually that keyboard was given down to a little musician and that's her starter, her tinkering, So there's quite a few ways to go about it. And if you are young and you're looking for, resources, Facebook, social media, go on Facebook Marketplace. They have very, very affordable and cheap, pianos that they're just trying to get rid of. Some of them are free. So go pick them up and get started there. But I would, to answer your other question, suggest learning piano first over guitar, drums, trumpet, anything. Piano first.
Okay. So, I just had a really good question and now, frankly, totally forgotten what it was. What was it?
I do that all the time.
Well, let's go back to social media and I'll hopefully remember what my music question was. What would your advice be? Well, actually for anybody who wants to use social media, from your experience as a social media agency owner, let's say I'm running some small business. Well, let's make it a music shop just for the thing. I'm running a music shop. What would and they don't want to spend necessarily a huge amount of money on social media, but what do you think is the most bang for your buck social media wise at the moment?
So the strategy that'll get you the most bang for your buck when you don't have much of a budget is staying consistent and staying unique. That's what I tell my clients. If they're not willing to go outside their comfort zone and do some kind of ploy or stunt that their competitors who are spending $5 million a month just on advertising are not doing, if they're not willing to step in where that gap is and make a move, they're not going to ever, I'm not going to say ever, never say never, but like it's going to be a lot harder to achieve what they want to achieve, whether it's followers, lead growth, customer retention, building a community, like whether it's any of those things, it's going to be hard if you're not staying consistent and staying unique. So that would be my first piece of advice for small businesses.
Okay. I've still totally forgotten what the music question was going to ask you. So let's think about. So we've talked about the singer bit a lot. We talked about the agency owner, the songwriting side. Everybody likes creative things. I mean, I write books and stuff. And I've written time travel books and fantasy books. So for me, it's like, yeah, creative. But people are worried about being creative. How do you be creative with the songs you write? Because it sounds like you write a lot of songs. You like writing songs. You're good at writing songs.
Yeah.
So how do you get the inspiration for writing all those songs? Have you got like a formula for them, or is it just you're naturally creative, or is it something you think you've learned over time?
It's a little bit of everything, but I got to tell you, for 28 years, I have a lot of life experience that I could write a lot about, whether it's loss or good things or tragedy or breakups or, like boys or girls, everything, like me. Yeah. Like I have gone through some ringers that I could probably pull content from for the next 10 years. In the last 28 years. Let me tell you, I got a lot to unpack in the songwriting. But if I ever feel like my life is just not interesting enough to write about, what I'll do is I'll kind of encompass, like, I'll start spending more time with friends, and I listen to my friends and what they might be going through and what's going on with them. What are they challenged with? What do they love? Things of that nature. And then more content pops up in my head. I've never truly hit in a writer's block, not once in my life. So it's weird that, you can just keep going and going. I will say though, where I do struggle is that there's like the same, whether it's minor or major, 4-chord progression in just about every song out there in the world. So turning it to sound different, or to make sure that your tune, your melody is not the same as like a hit melody from the 80s, or 70s. That's the most challenging part of songwriting, is making sure that it is, because sometimes with tonal memory, right? You hear something from 10 years ago, and it's amazing that, you're playing piano and you might have that same progression chord. So you're playing it and then you start coming up with that tune that you don't know that but it exists. And that's where you gotta stay out of trouble,
So how do you go about checking that? Are you like you use one Shazam or one of those apps that's good, just to check? Yeah,
I do. I use Shazam. I also use my friends in my immediate circle. If I release a song, before I release a song, I'll send it to everybody and say, hey, put your ears on this. Is it red hot for, does it sound like something that Dua Lipa already wrote? Or does it sound like something from the 70s, 80s? I mean, I have people from all different age brackets in my circle just for that reason. Like, make sure you listen to it and it doesn't sound immediately like anything else that you've heard, and that's kind of how I stay safe with it. But ultimately, you can still get pinged. I mean, look at all the lawsuits that are happening right now. But, like, you can still get pinged, and it's not, it's most likely not even on purpose. So.
Yeah. I've remembered, it's a very unprosaic question, unfortunately, but how hard is it for somebody to release a song onto, say, Spotify or Amazon Music or one of these other services?
It's not hard.
And my understanding is it's quite easy now. I mean, what is the process like of doing that? And can anybody release a song though, or do you have to do any criteria?
Well, I mean, so like if you're using a service like TuneCore or like CD Baby, all you do is literally upload your artwork and upload your song, and then you pick your release date and it flies. Now, where I will say you might get hung up if you don't have a quality song, like if it's not the type of quality that they could hear on Apple Music or Amazon Music or YouTube or Spotify, they might reject it, and then you'll have to go remaster the track. But it's very easy, and honestly, it's kind of rare that they kick it back. And it has to be really bad for them to kick it back. And no offense to anyone out there who has had it kicked back, but you might have some work to do. Like, you know, it might be one of those situations. But it's very easy. It's a 15-minute process max once you have all your assets.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk. I've got a few minutes left before the end of the interview. Let's talk about what have you got planned in the future? What have you got planned in the future, and where would you like your future to expand? What would you like to happen in the next couple of years?
So I'm going to give you the answer that I have been giving everyone, because I believe in manifestation, and I believe in manifesting what you want. And this is what I tell people who want to work with me in music. My goal in the next 5 years is to have $5 million freestanding dollars in my bank account, freestanding after expenses. And I want to have won 3 Grammys in the next five years. So anyone who I partner with in music, if I feel like they're not on that same wavelength, or they don't really care to achieve those things, we don't work together. It's just that simple. That's where I see myself, because I can do a lot of good with $5 million. And not talking about buying a house, and I'm not talking about buying a yacht. I'm not talking about that. I can do a lot of good. There's programs I want to set up for young musicians. There's things I want to do to give back to the community. And of course, I want to take care of my family first. They come first. But that's where I want to be in the next 5 years. What it looks like in the immediate future is landing some pretty big sync and publishing deals, whether it be with, like MTV or iHeartRadio, or like Peacock TV, like, writing music for major networks. Okay.
Well, don't beat yourself up in 5 years' time that you've only won 2 Grammys.
I'm going to call you up. Tim, I've only won 2.
I'm a massive failure. I only won 2 Grammys.
Out there on this call.
I've got $6 million in the bank, but I've only won 2 Grammys.
I've only won 2 Grammys. You're going to hear me cry about it. No, I would be very grateful to win 1 Grammy, but you asked me what the goals are. So those are the goals.
I think I don't know if I've ever watched the Grammys. Well, it's not really a thing here in the UK because it's on American, but they have separate categories. So do you want to win like the same category over, or do you want to win 3 separate categories at the Grammys?
I'm not picky. I just want to win a Grammy. I don't care if I wrote a song for a different group, and I win as a songwriter. Like, ultimately, that's what I want to win a Grammy for, is a songwriter. Because I'm going to sound like a snob for a music snob for 2 seconds, but there's a lot of people who can just sing. And if you're just a singer, you got a lot of work and you got a lot of competition, because you better know how to write a hit in about 3 seconds. And your opportunity happens when that executive walks into a studio, and if you can't show out versus the singer songwriter who can write hits and whatever, like, you're in trouble. So it's one of those things where I don't want to just be nominated as a singer. That wouldn't feel like an accomplishment to me. I want to be the where I started, and where I will end is songwriting, no matter what. So. Okay.
Well, on that note, can you tell everybody how they can find out about you if they want to hire you to write them a Grammy-winning song, or if they want to listen to your music, how they could do that, and if they want to hire you for social media purposes, then?
Wow. Oh, well, so if you want to hire me for social media, you just go to shelkosocialmedia.com, and that's SHELKO socialmedia.com. Yeah. If you want to hire me for music production services, it's levelupmusicproductions.com. If you want to just hang out with me on social media, it's Brianna_Shelko. Yeah. And that's my username across Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. So, and Twitter. I mean, TikTok. So you'll be able to find me quite easy. I think I'm the only Brianna Shelko in the entire United States and Canada. So it's like 1 in a billion. It's a very rare name, apparently. So.
Well, that's a good thing, actually. I mean, it's like I've got Tim Lewis is a terribly common name. That's what the Stone and Press on most of them. Ironically, I put the name Stoneham Press because I was born in Russell Stoneham Hospital, which doesn't exist anymore. So I was like, oh. Then I discovered there's a suburb of Boston called Stoneham. So everybody thinks I'm in some way related to Boston, and I'm not at all.
Boston? Well, no, you're quite far away from Boston, but
I know we're near Boston. Yeah, I created the name of the company based on something else, and it's like, oh, are you based in Stoneham? I'm like, no, I've nothing to do with Boston. Stoneham in Boston.
Hop across the pond, my guy.
Yeah, at some point, I will. Next time I go to Boston, it's a suburb. It's kind of it's not easy to get to. There's no station there or anything. But sometime I'll take an Uber there and just visit Stoneham. So Stoneham Press in Stoneham.
That is cool.
Anyway, thank you so much for being a guest. And yes, I suppose I should play the outro titles out. I always screw up the outro. I never know what to say, so I'm just going to say goodbye. And thanks to anybody who watched the live show and anybody who watches the replay. So thanks a lot for being on the show. Thanks for having me.
This is what God requires.